country. So I would like to start off today just with a bit of housekeeping, since I think we have some colleagues that are also a bit delayed coming in this morning. But we wanted to share a bit about yesterday and some things that we learned that we can update you on for today. We learned yesterday that in the groups, some of the speaking sessions were a bit longer, which limited the time for discussion. So we wanted to kindly ask you today, for the groups and the plenaries perhaps, to try to keep your statements brief, and that way we can have more time for the discussion and the outcomes that we hope we can collect at the end of the meeting tomorrow, at the end of the symposium. So discussion's brief, and then the next announcement is that today, this evening, we will also have a dinner. We will end at 5:30, and at 6:15 we will have a dinner that is hosted by Incheon Metropolitan City for all of the delegates here today, and the distinguished guests, so we look forward to that. And then, as a last note, if you have any PowerPoints or things that have not been submitted yet for the rest of the day, my colleague here, Hunjae, he is happy to receive them. So on that note, I think we can begin with our first plenary for today, Plenary Session 2. Plenary Session 2 today, and the entire day, will really focus on localizing and more impact-oriented discussions and presentations. So we will have our first moderator for today, Ms. Michaela Prokop from UNDP. So I'd like to welcome her to the stage.
Good morning. Welcome you all, Excellencies, distinguished participants, to a panel on localizing the SDGs, enhancing cooperation between central and local governments and equipping institutions. Yesterday we talked a lot about the importance of policy integration, and we also heard of the importance of thinking globally and acting locally. And we know that from one of the lessons learned from the MDGs is that it is really important to go to the subnational level or to the local level, but it's not just about the aggregate, particularly since one of the aspirations of the 2030 agenda is to leave no one behind. So at the local level, this is where results are achieved. But it's also not only about the importance of localizing, but also ensuring the coherence and the integration between the national and the subnational, so the vertical coherence. So we will have a very interesting panel today, starting with a keynote speech, and then several presentations and interventions also from some of the mayors who are present today. So I'd like to ask our keynote speaker, Ms. Doreen Shahnaz, founder, Impact Investment Exchange and Foundation, to give us an overview of the role of impact investment in. Please, could I ask you to come to the... Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, thank you for having me here. So I'm, I guess, a little unusual in this group because I am not from the government or from the UN. So what I am from is actually representing a very interesting and emerging new sector, which everyone is now embracing because this is frankly what we need if we are going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So let me jump into it. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is taking your discussions that you had yesterday in terms of all the need that we have and all the things that we're trying to do, and frankly, how to finance it. Now, I have to, again, not being a UN official, I have to say, for me it has been a learning the last few years when I've been invited to give talks at the UN gatherings, because for me, I understood, I remember in a recent one at a UNSCAP gathering, where there were high-level officials and some private sector partners, that the way from the public sector we view the private sector involvement is really through just RFPs. Well, you need a bridge to be built, you put out an RFP. you need the telecom sector to be done, you put out an RFP. Now, what you need to be all thinking about is how does the private sector engagement go beyond RFP? Because private sector is holding one of the keys to sustainable development, which is the capital markets. Capital markets is a $65 trillion market globally. And we need to know a way to tap into it. And that's what I'm going to tell you today. So today's talk is about harnessing the power of finance to meet the sustainable development goals. Now, before I sort of jump into it, let's just put things in a bit of a context. And I think, again, when we have these gatherings, we always forget that there's actually a lot of things to celebrate as well. There are a lot of problems in the world, and all of you in this room are doing an amazing job in addressing them. But let's also step back and celebrate some of the great things that's happening. And one of the greatest things is that Asia really now is a powerhouse for economic growth. And over the last 4 decades, we have now a lot of countries who are now beacon of growth, and we are in one of them today. I live in Singapore, and that is, again, one of the greatest examples of economic growth. The economic growth has translated into a lot of wealth, and one of the staggering figures of that wealth is now in Asia, we have 3.3 million high net worth individuals, and these are people with wealth of over $100 million. That's a staggering amount of wealth, and this also, of course, reflects from the good news of what all the economic growth and good things that has been happening. Now, interestingly, if you also step back, we see that while this growth has happened, the inequality has really grown tremendously. We have now the richest 1% of the world who own more than 48% of the wealth, and a lot of them are sitting here in Asia. We also have over 30% of the people in Asia who still live under $1.25 a day. And frankly, again, a lot of those people are in your countries. And if you look at the actual consumption, yes, the consumption has gone up so much, also with economic growth, that we are now depleting all our resources. We're cutting up all the trees, we're eating up all the fish, and literally everything is collapsing in terms of natural resources. So the reality is we, of course, need to not only talk about how to get the funding or the need that's there, but we need to actually talking about how do we actually do it in a sustainable way. Now, interestingly, in 2008, if you all remember, the financial crisis happened. And again, right before that, the financial markets, which is the nature of the markets, they get very excited, then get very sad, they again get very excited. So this was, of course, the sad time. And in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, post-financial crisis, one of the reactions to that was the fact that finance was looked at in a very myopic way, meaning there was only one focus in the financial markets, which was really to maximize profit. So a global initiative got started, which I was part of, where we said, how about looking at finance in a more holistic way? And that what gave the emergence of impact investing. So what is impact investing? It is really an interesting paradigm shift that's happening, which is allowing for the private sector to come in for development initiatives. Now, they're not doing this as a charity. They're not doing this as a way to sort of feel like they're doing CSR or doing something when you actually make a lot of money and give the money to church or a mosque. This is really saying, how do we use business and the business practices to create social and environmental good? So the definition of impact investing is a very interesting one. So if nothing else, I would like you to sort of lead the day-to-day remembering this. It is investments intended, and the key word here is intention, that it is actually intention to do good. So the investment intended to create positive social and impact beyond financial return. So it really is in the DNA of the work, it's in the DNA of the organization, but you have to have a financial return. So really recognizing the fact that it is not charity, and also recognizing the fact it is not solely just for financial return. Now, when we say this, and so what I did here was really sort of point out, some of the key words, that private capital, business designed with intention to generate positive social return, and of course, very importantly, there has to be a financial return. Now, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which you have been discussing, and the past day, and you'll be discussing, for a couple of days now, there's an interesting nexus, between impact investing and what the UN Sustainable Development Goals are trying to do, the 17 goals that we're trying to meet. Now, also we know the fact that if we are going to be doing this, we have to look at really very, very acutely which are the Sustainable Development Goals that can be met by impact investing. All of them can, but if you look at it, these are the ones which really jump out in terms of poverty, in terms of climate action, in terms of gender equality. These are the things that can be met right away if we actually do impact investing, the effective method. Now, interestingly, the SDGs, in order for us to meet them, by 2030, one of the numbers that has been coming up is the fact that we need $7 trillion every year. Now, it is an astounding number, and there is no way that's going to come from donors. It's not going to come from philanthropy. The rich people I talked about who are sitting in Asia, 3.4 million, trust me, they're not just going to write you a check. So how do we actually meet this goal, to meet the Sustainable Development Goals and bring them? Now, so this is where we are today. So we have $7 trillion, and then we do know that there's an interest of bringing in social and environmental good along with financial return, but it is very difficult. You cannot get there. So it's almost like you need that right key, that right passcode. How do we unlock this? How do we actually get this money from capital markets? And the good news is there's actually a way. There are now stock exchanges, there are now bonds, there are now PE funds, there's various kind of technical assistance that's coming in, there's crowdfunding, there's accelerators, so many different facilities, many different products, services are coming up, which are all bringing these together. Now, the company that I created almost a decade ago now, after the post-financial crisis, it's called Impact Investment Exchange. Now, what sort of makes me sort of an expert on this, it's the fact that I started my career in Morgan Stanley in New York about 30 years ago. And from there, I went to Grameen Bank, which, trust me, no one knew Grameen Bank in the early 90s. So that is where, frankly, I brought the whole notion of finance and development together. Now, what IX does is really effectively using finance to do three things, three pillars. One, of course, is women, to bring women into the equation of solving problems rather than sort of being portrayed as victims. Looking at actually creating resilient communities, and then, of course, creating ways and methods to have an adaptable climate, because again, the climate change is here, so we have to figure out how to live with it and make sure we don't destroy the planet. So all of these things are done through the lens of finance. Now, what we have done over the last 9 years is now we are not only operating in Asia, but now we are global, and focusing on the 5 sectors that we focus in energy, agriculture, education, health, water. And with that work, we have now mobilized over $75 million, and we've impacted over 12 million lives. Now, interestingly, we have actually done this not alone. We have brought in numerous partners across the ecosystem and created an effective ecosystem where partners are coming in, law firms, investment banks, you have rating agencies, you have research firms, all of them are coming together in effectively creating the space, which frankly we can't avoid anymore and we need to have as a very core part of what we're doing. we have been recognized for our work now globally, which is very exciting. And the most recent one was us getting the Oslo Business for Peace Award, which is equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize for the businesses. So what this all shows is the fact that people are seeing that this is something that is needed. Now, what does this mean for all of you in the audience? And this is all fine and good, and I'm sure Stephen's saying, okay, great, so what does this really mean? We're spending these 3 days here trying to figure out how to have the public sector play a role in sustainable development goals, and how do we actually do that? Well, what we did was we actually boiled it down to 3 simple things that you can start with. First and foremost, you can start learning about it. This is essential because we see one of the biggest challenges for us, interestingly, as the space is growing, is not the private sector, it's not NGOs, but it really is the public sector. Public sector has been the last piece of that ecosystem. And if you go back to the chart, you will see public sector is not there. So one of the big reasons is the fear of the unknown. And there's nothing to be fearful of. So step 1 is to learn. Step 2 is to strategize. You need to then see, okay, what does this mean for my country? And step 3 is actually do something about it. Because I think we talk a lot. We like to talk. We like to solve the world problem with words. But we actually need to do something about it. So going a little deeper in it, in terms of learning, when we started this, again, a while ago, one of the big things we did was the fact that we would go out and teach the private sector about it. So we taught how to do impact investing to all these different banks. We went and taught all these different NGOs, really bringing people in terms of understanding how to deepen your knowledge and understanding of finance and how finance can do good and be translated into doing good. Also, how does this actually come into the SDGs? You have an SDG goal. How can finance be meeting that? And then again, you also have your own stakeholders that need to be part of it to understand this. And they need to be coming in. Now, after doing all of this, so our next step was, okay, that's great, and we were starting to do the work, and we said, now we need to actually see each of the countries, what do you need? So in terms of the country's funding, each one of you need to think about how to actually meet your goals with the money that you have right now, which is obviously not enough, but perhaps using that in a very strategic way to open up the capital markets, map out what this will be, and then also really figure out a systemic way that the finance can be used along the way. Now, interestingly, we did some very interesting work with the Malaysian government, and I'll just show one page of this 200-page report that we did. And you'll hear some announcement, interestingly, actually next week from the Malaysian government, some big ones, as a result of this, is we actually looked at the Malaysian setup and we said, okay, Malaysia is known as a rich country, but interestingly, there's still a lot of social need, and the government wants to get the private sector into it. So the way we did it is we looked at, we created a roadmap, short, medium, long term, in terms of the Malaysian government, where they are. What is needed in each step, and then how do you bring the private sector in? So now, interestingly, I think the thing to kind of look at, and I know you can't read the text, is really only the axis. So on one axis is the supply of capital, and the other axis is demand of capital. So supply of capital, meaning how it's going to come from the private sector, in what way? Is it through capital markets? Is it through certain products? Is it through certain type of initiatives? How it's going to come? And then demand side of capital is who can absorb it. It's not about just getting the money, right? You have to actually know what are the organizations, what are the projects, whatever, that can actually give a financial return. And if they can't get the financial return now, how do we actually make them do that? So these are the things that we did, and interestingly, Malaysia is one of sort of the very forward-looking governments who are actually moving along with this. Now, I do want to stress the fact that a lot of countries, including sort of my country of birth, Bangladesh, is rapidly becoming a middle-income country. And this is something that will be essential for you to do. Why? Because your donor funding is going to go away. And if you are going to have no donor funding, and you're supposed to be financing yourself, which you should be, and we should be thinking about that, then you need to have a plan like this. It's essential. Now, in terms of execute, and I wanted to just to give you a tiny bit of flavor, you can say, okay, that all sounds good, but give us an example of what has happened. Well, one of the interesting things we did lately is we actually, a part of the many things we do, one of the things we did is we created the world's first social stock exchange. And then also we said, okay, we're going to have interesting products that come up that meet these sustainable development goals. So in this case, we created the world's first bond, which is focused on creating livelihood for women. So we created a bond which is now creating livelihood for 385,000 women across Southeast Asia. So Philippines, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And it was an extremely innovative structure. We used all the things that you do in finance, and we sold it openly in the market, the bond. We had some fantastic partners who worked with us on this. And the end result now, for the first time ever, and I want you to understand the magnitude of this, first time ever, a bond with a social angle is listed on Singapore Stock Exchange, which is one of the top stock exchanges in the world. And also, the bond is being monitored and being paid off, giving a coupon of 5.6%, plus it is actually giving a result of the women who have been impacted. So the first time ever it's happening. And the amazing thing was, it was incredibly celebrated by the private sector. The bond was oversubscribed. This tells you there is a passcode to get this money from the private sector. We just need to know that passcode, and how do we actually access that. Now, we have a whole bunch of these bonds which are in the pipeline, and I would love for all of you to be involved with it. We are creating the Women's Livelihood Bond 2, 3, etc. We are looking at a haze bond. We have a big pollution problem, a haze problem in Southeast Asia, so we're trying to tackle that with it. We are creating a women's health bond in the US, because the current policies have cut down the health care for low-income women in the US, so we're now creating a women's health bond in the US. We're creating a vision bond so that people can actually get eye care and glasses. All of this is not philanthropy. These are real financial instruments that is actually giving financial return, but also creating incredible social and environmental good. So as I finish up, I do want you to take away the fact that we can use finance to do good, and you have the power to make that first step to come towards this. And you do that by, one, learning to how to engage with the private sector, strategizing what is needed for your country or for your organization if you're a UN body, and then really knowing how to execute. And of course, we are here at IAX to do all of that work. We're doing it, so do join us in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If you would like to stay, then focus. Many thanks for a fascinating presentation on how we can tap the capital markets for social impact. Yes, anyway, please. And particularly also the 3 steps, which I hope we can discuss a bit further in the discussion later. So could I kindly ask the other panelists to join us now at the podium? Ms. Gurley Grace Casimiro Ikpen, Chief Economic Development Specialist from the National Economic Development Agency of the Philippines, and Mr. Hoiseong Lee, Director General, International Cooperation Bureau, Seoul Metropolitan Government, Mr. Arab Hoballa, Team Leader, EU GIZ Switch Asia Facility on Sustainable Consumption and Production, and Dr. Lan Zue, Dean of the School of Public Policy and Management, Sustainable Development Institute of Tsinghua University in China. Please join us here. So may I ask now Mr. Hoiseong Lee, Director General of the International Cooperation Bureau, Seoul Metropolitan Government, to tell us a bit more about how Seoul's government is committed to the 2030 agenda and how is it localizing the SDGs. And this will be sort of followed by short interventions by the mayors who are have joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning again. My name is Blessing Lee, DJ of International Cooperation Bureau in SMG. First of all, I want to show you that thank you again for giving a chance to share the source cases with you. Actually, I want to present categorize the 3-1 is how SMG introduced the SDG goals in the city policies. And then during the fulfillment, it's what is the best cases. And the last one is how could the Seoul government share the source cases with the global cities. Yeah, Seoul also have 17 goals with 97 specific detailed goals. More than as Seoul also have a direction from the materialism to the quality, and then production to the citizens' lifestyle. For this, we have two key strategies. First, we want to try to internalize the SDG values into the city policy process, set up the policies, implementation, and then the evaluation in terms of SDGs. Second one, to achieve these goals, we want to introduce the 3 different types of governance. First one is a governance between central government and SDG, SMG, Seoul Metropolitan Government. Second one is the SMG and then county government in Seoul. Last one is the government, central SMG and the local government with civil society. So we have a good harmony between 3 categories of governance. As you know, yes, maybe my parents said sometimes, Korea has a sad story. In 1950s, Korean War destroyed all the facilities in Korea and especially Seoul. But since 1960s, we make some already said, Asia's miracle. We have a huge size of economic development. Unfortunately, we also have some big problem by the urbanization. So Seoul also have, when I was young, maybe some of my parents said sometimes Korea, the dirty waters, short of the housing, traffic jam, crazy, everything is problem, issues now we can watch in the developing cities. But it's lucky came to Korea. My ancestors and my seniors tried to solve these issues with some strategy like this governance and focusing on the development. So we fortunately find some good cases to solve these issues. So I want to show you shortly about 6 representative cases for that. First, transportation. Yes, so whenever it's very VIP from the worldwide visit Korea, they it's one course to visit shoot is Korea Seoul Metropolitan Topic Center. Topic Center is that integrated real data based on transportation service. So centers gather the information from the road condition, accident, and the interval of the bus driving, all kinds of information gathering, and then serves to the government, bus company, and individual citizens. So government analyze the data to make a new route, new policies, and the company also have take time to control the bus some stops to interval. And the citizen also using the most information with the smartphone and credit card, right side of that, easily transferring to the other tools from the survey into buses. Also, every bus station you can find some small screen means show you that 50 buses arrive here within 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So sometimes in office, I want to go to the station, check up the smartphone. So, and then this one is related to the SDGs. So in Korea, mass transportation stops take charge of 70% of the transportation between house to the office, and it's sharing citizens' activities for the commute from the car driving to using the mass transportation. Second is the waste. Yes, basically the waste problems we solve with the strong partnership with the citizens and government. For example, look at the top of the right. So we have separate systems. The citizens use the whole garbage into the usable recycling one out. And then so we have a plastic bag. Bag means, so housekeepers, like for example, me, should try to decrease the amount of waste. Second one, we introduced the 4 incineration plant in downtown. Do you know Gangnam? Near my home, Gangnam is have one. Gangnam, Mapo, no one in Mokdong is the downtown of Seoul. The incineration is not bad to citizens. So, whole this process, you sharply decrease the amount of the waste. Look at the graphs. So, landfill also decrease sharply. So, we have some spaces, some save the energies, some save the money through this co-work between government and citizens. Yeah, water issues also. Yes, you can safely drink your tap water in Korea. Tap water Korea also a big problem before maybe 30 years ago. 30 is a stomach aching. But recently, Korea, Seoul introduced 2. One is advanced water purification facilities, and then is how to say, rebuild the pipeline. So WHO acknowledged that Seoul's Aris means tap water is quality is the world best, and the price also is the lowest in the world. How to say, square meters, the price is just only 40 cents. It's unbelievable, and the revenue ratio of the water is 95%. Third one is maybe, I want to introduce an e-government system. Last one is we can find our bus. Actually, do you know Gangnam Style? Yes. And then third is one is a famous one is club. Young people, tourists enjoy the nightlife clubs. In Hongdae, Gangnam, some people enjoy overnight dancing. But unfortunately, after midnight, it's not crazy. It's crazy to take a taxi, So they want to go home, back home, but they don't have enough stops to carry them to go home. So, and then they need mass transportation. But mass transportation company, they don't want because they don't have any enough demands. They need profit. So, what is the match of this one? So one citizen suggests to the mayor, yes, mayor, please make a nightline bus. How? So we need 2 matchup. Needs the company profit and the needs of the client's demand. So we have ideas. We analyze 3 billion calling data between location, Gangnam, into the home. Somebody, daddy, I can't catch the taxi, please give me a ride. So, fortunately, we have 9 lanes to meet the need by the user and the private company. So, we have 9 nightline buses, cheaper than taxis, easy to take taxis. So, all of them is also decrease the traffic jam or even the midnight. And then please enjoy the nighttime dancing in Seoul. You can. Also, regeneration also is a good idea to achieve the SDGs. Yes, Seoul also have within short times big issues. So downtown is some industrialization, but the old one, citizen does not want anymore, or they need a more natural one to enjoy the lifestyle. So we have three categories of restoration, regeneration. First one, have you ever been to Cheonggyecheon? Cheonggyecheon is a downtown, is a stream. It was the overhead highway from the downtown to the northern of the Seoul. Recently, maybe the former mayor president, I'm sorry, give me 2 minutes, please. Okay, so we are try restore the industrialized zone to pedestrian-friendly system. Last one, is a time to show. We have one policy to save the energy to amount the one nuclear plant produced by the decreased consumption by the citizens' participation, and they produce another energies. So one nuclear plant produced 200 million ton TOE, but we decrease the energy consumption and increase the alternative tools to match up the one nuclear plant's energy. This is a best practice. Last one, give me 1 minute, please. We have some problem and issues. We have some trial and errors, same errors, some good solution. So we want to share the source cases with another cities in the world. What best solution in urbanization process? So I'm going to show it. And then to show that we have partners with the central government, like Azerbaijan, Buenos Argentina, and then some Kiev, also Ukraine, and the Korean central government also, financial division, and then EDCF, KOICA, and the local government and the world, international financial institute like World Bank, ADB, or other stuff. And then so local private area like a smart card and the transportation corporation. So I show you that. Seoul cases now shared with 27 countries, 39 cities, totally 55 cases. So Buenos Aires used big data like our boss. Also Kiev, Ukraine, also introduced the Seoul cases our boss using the analyzing the big data. And the Indonesia also introduced the right survey. So best one is, I want to show you two of them. One is Bogota. Bogota introduced Seoul's smart card system. One credit card, one smart card, using the transportation easily transfer with free. So, second is Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan introduced Korean Seoul's copy system. So centralized control center distribute the transportation condition and the more comparable service to the citizens. And the last one, yes. Recently, Seoul government and then UNESCO and then CityNet. CityNet is a network for the local government like county levels or city levels. 3 partners may launch the online platform. Online platform means share the best practice through the online. Now, almost 100 best cases are known. Some of them Korean, Seoul, Suwon, Changwon, and then Kuala Lumpur and Sri Lanka. Every cities share the best practice to share each cities to achieve the SDG goal in itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing us with the impressive progress that has been made by Seoul. I would now like to ask the other mayors to share their experience of how they are localizing the SDGs in their cities. May I ask Honorable Asha Kumari, Mayor of Chandigarh in India, to come quickly to the podium and share experience from Chandigarh. Then maybe Honorable Eloy Iklar, Mayor of Gerona in the Philippines. If you could share briefly your experience of how your city is localizing the SDGs and some of the priorities that you've identified.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a distinct honor to be invited the significant convergence on advancing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I am Engineer Eloy Seglar, a civil engineer by profession, and established my own construction company before I joined government service. As a first-term elected municipal mayor, having served for 17 months, I was already awarded as the most outstanding mayor. Recently, under my administration, my municipality was awarded with the most coveted seal of good local governance, a national award given for local government unit by the national government. But the award or any recognition won't be enough if this will not be felt by the people, if this will not improve their lives. And so, it is with excitement that I joined the symposium because as a new local chief executive, I believe I can learn a lot more from the people in this hall. At the same time, I'm pleased to share what we have done and what we are doing at the local level in terms of localizing the SDGs through an enhanced cooperation with our national, regional, and provincial government as well as with our private stakeholders. Again, good morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I now ask Ms. Honorable Surya Yekung, Mayor of the BRIC municipality from Thailand, to share his views on how his city is localizing this.
Very good morning, Excellency, participants. My name is Surya Yekung, Mayor of BRIC municipality from Thailand. I would like to share some idea according to the mayor role, because we come from election. We just have very short period of time, just only 4 years to term. Then in the mayor role, we have to play actively role. We cannot wait. That's so why localizing SDG, we also have some kind of adapt. We did not wait for the central government. We just run our own because we have some of budget, our own budget in hand. Then we take into account that we're looking for the quality of life of the people. So then we have to clarify what the duty of municipality to do for their people. First, the goal number one, we have connected with the Royal Project and some private sector to build up in terms of the housing for the poor people, to leverage their income also by SME, SML project for enhancing their economy in the grassroots level. And another goal, since number 1 up to 17, we have many sort of projects done by our own in the local level. For example, like number 7, we have contact with the private sector to invest solar cell energy for irrigation, for water pumping, and for some public area. That means the mosque or masjid. We provide solar cell energy for electricity in the public area in the masjid. And goal number 4, education. We also have some kind of school since kindergarten up to 9th class. We run our own school by our own budget in local government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Honorable Noel Rosal, Mayor of Legazpi City from the Philippines.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I am Mayor Noel Rosal of the city of Legazpi from the Philippines. Yesterday, it's a big opportunity for me to once again share our best practices for disaster risk reduction management. In my city, if you will see my term of office as mayor of the city, I've been there for almost 17 years now. And I do believe the reason why I'm still here, I started very young at the age of 23 years old, because I do believe that governance is a shared responsibility. 9 years ago, we embarked on a very ambitious program of enrolling under the Institute for Solidarity in Asia, wherein we involved not only the public sector, but also the private sector. We do believe that in order to be our sustainable development agenda, we need the support of the private initiatives. Almost 9 years now, we've been doing this vision of our city to become, by 2020, one of the top 5 convention destinations in one of the main area or island of the Philippines, Luzon, where Manila is also located. And would you believe, because of the initiatives wherein we have the public sector composed of the local governments, the stakeholders from the public, and the MSDC or the multi-sectoral government coalition, it's really very effective that almost just after 8 years, we're almost there. An average of about 81 to 85 meetings, incentives, conferences, and events in our city, making us now top 5 in the country. I do believe that resources is very crucial as we are discussing here financing of programs. But I do believe also that there should be an initiative on the local government's part to make it a true sense of doable programs and to be more attractive for private investments and initiatives also. So today, as I'm given again an opportunity, I could have presented to you one of the many programs of the city. We have launched one of the very ambitious boulevard, an investment of about $500 million with no cost to the city. We have also a lot of the big malls in Manila already transferring in our city. And we have a lot of disaster risk reduction management, ranking us number 1 in the country for disaster risk reduction management, for bringing out zero casualty. As you all know, our city belongs to the Pacific Ocean. We have an average of 10 to 12 typhoons per year, but it was never an hindrance. As a matter of fact, just recently, before I boarded coming here, we were again voted as one of the most competitive cities in the country. Again, to everyone, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Now, maybe we can turn to Ms. Gurley, Grace Casimiro Ikben, who's from the National Economic and Development Authority. She will give us an overview of the central government's coordinating role for the SDGs and why also the role and the voice of local governments is important in the implementation of the SDGs.
Good morning to our distinguished guests and all the participants. It is nice to be presenting after our distinguished mayors from the Philippines because it only tells you that localization in the Philippines is very important in terms of achieving the SDGs. We believe that the success or the failure of achieving the SDGs really rests primarily with our local government units intervention. Because in the Philippines, we have a decentralized government for local government units, and the interventions for the development and the welfare of the constituents rest primarily on the local government units. So in the Philippines, we are an archipelagic country. We have 17 regions. We have 81 provinces. We have 1,489 municipalities. And we also have 145 cities. And out of this, we have very small villages, but which we call barangays, which are 42,036. So with that number, you will see how it is very challenging for the Philippines to really localize the SDGs in all of these local government units. Learning from the success in the Millennium Development Goals for the Philippines in achieving it, we are bringing those lessons that we learned to the implementation of the SDGs. And we believe that there are three very important components in terms of localizing the SDGs. Number one is you start first with awareness raising for all the local government units, especially the local chief executives. Second is the SDGs integration into the local development plans. The Philippines have already integrated the SDGs in the national development plans. Now we are moving to integrating the SDGs on all the local development plans. And third is the implementation of the programs and projects at the local level, not just at the national level. So let me walk you through one by one on what we are currently doing in terms of these three components. Also, in implementing these components, we believe in a whole of government and whole of society approach. So what you would see in that slide are the different stakeholders or actors in localizing the SDGs. NEDA, or the agency which I belong to, is the Ministry of Planning in the Philippines. We are the main coordinating agency for implementation of the SDGs. We are in partnership with the PSA, or the Statistical Agency of the Philippines. And we also have partnerships with other national government agencies, primarily with the Department of Interior and Local Government for the local government, civil society, local government units, the academe, and other stakeholders. In terms of awareness raising, we are currently doing workshops for all the regional, provincial, and municipal governments. So we have finished 100% for the regional. We are at 67% for the provincial governments and 50% for cities and municipalities. We also have been developing the SDG module in partnership with the UNITAR and the CIFAL Philippines for us to be able to mainstream the SDG module to the local government academy, the institution in charge of giving capacity building for the local government units. We are also developing currently advocacy materials such as brochures, an SDG song, so that we will be touching base with the local government units and also the youth and the millennials. In terms of SDG integration, during those workshops, we are doing strategic priorities and SDG alignment for the local development plans and also the investment programs of the local government units. We are also conducting workshops on SDG advocacy and awareness raising campaign involving the officials of the NEDA regional offices and the interior local government offices. On project implementation, we have been implementing the phases or the family-based actions for children and the environment's approach. This is in partnership with the UNDP. As of the moment, we have 95% of the cities who signed for a memorandum of agreement to localize the SDGs using the phases approach. Also, we are trying to identify a flagship SDG program for the local government, taking off from the experience of Dipolog City and other Galing Pook awardees. Our mayor from Herona, their city, is an awardee of the Galing Pook awardees, and we would like to do that as a best practice to all other local government units. So this is the example of Dipolog City. From this situation, they are now at this point. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that because of the time limitation. So let me just share you on 4 very important points, or what we call in the Philippines as the game changers in terms of SDG localization. Number 1, it is very important for us to make our local chief executives, our mayors, and our governors as the champions for the sustainable development goals. We need to engage, inform, and involve them at all levels of development of the SDGs, including budgeting, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Second is coaching. We need to capacitate all our local government units. It is a very opportune time for us now in the Philippines because with the introduction of the SDGs is also the new election of government officials. Third is there's a need to build the data at the local level, not just at the national level, so that we will be able to monitor the progress of our SDGs. And lastly, there should be, using the whole of society approach, there should be a seamless partnership with all the stakeholders. So we would like to have at the minimum, not just at the minimum to inform the community, but also to engage these communities in terms of good practices to establish accountability, transparency, and trust among and between the stakeholders and the implementers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I now ask Mr. Arap Pobala, Team Leader, EU GIZ Switch Asia Facility on Sustainable Consumption and Production, to talk about how effective localization is key to move towards more resource-efficient development and sustainable consumption.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I will try in 10 minutes to talk about the elephant in the room that nobody seemed to have seen around, which only one person at the end of her comment mentioned, and I said, oof, somebody is talking about it. I'm referring to the last comment of Mrs. Nuruddin yesterday when she referred to the sustainable consumption and production patterns. We're talking about sustainability, we talk about SDGs, we talk about the cities, we don't talk about the key element, which are our unsustainable consumption and production patterns, and how we should and need to change them. I have been battling for it for 30 years, desperately. So I'm 95% pessimist, only 5% optimist, and I live with this 5%. And I hope you can help me taking it up to 6 and 7%. Now, our world is being urbanized, we all know it, but what is extremely important here is that if you look at the news, if you look what the UN said, we always talk about the increase of the population. We focus about the 9 billion and 2 people coming up. We don't refer enough about our increasing consumption patterns. We keep on consuming, and we just focus about the increase of population. The population is not the problem. It is a minor problem. The big problem are our consumption patterns. So we need to see how we can work here on sustainable consumption production. It has been a very long process within the UN, a very difficult learning process that took more than 20 years before we come to what we call the 10-year framework of program, before we managed to get SDG 12. Nobody ever believed that we could get SDG 12 in January 2015. Many delegations were against that. We finally got it, and we got SDG target in many goals there. It is based on a very simple concept, resource efficiency. When you say resource efficiency, it saves money to people, to government, to enterprise. Everybody knows how to work around it. But as we failed in delivering sustainable development, we invented green growth, we invented green economy, we invented circular economy, we're going to invent something else. Still, we're not dealing with our unsustainable consumption production patterns. And the big problem, what we'll have tomorrow, mainly in Asia, are the 3 billion middle-class consumers coming in the market in the next 25 years, mostly from Asia. If they consume like a middle-class European, we are all going to hell. There are no resources on earth for that, so something needs to change. Look at the SDGs. If you look at them very carefully, at least 12 of them are very closely related to the use of resources. How are we using them? How are we disposing them? How are we managing them? And the only way, if we want to make a change, is to focus at city level, and that's why localization is extremely important. I used to call the cities the industry of the three quarters, and I will explain the two words. Industry, and there are many mayors here, because I believe that the city needs to be managed almost like an enterprise. You have input, output, you have employees, you want to make sure that your enterprise keeps on, you want to make benefits, use better your resources. This is a way also of looking at the city. Three quarters, very simple. It's an order of magnitude. Today in Latin America and tomorrow in other parts of the world, we will have between 70 and 95% of the population, GDP, use of resources, greenhouse gas emission at city level. So exactly as our previous Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, global sustainability will be won or lost at city level. But we have not given it enough attention, hence the failure of the new urban agenda at Quito. And now the whole problem negotiating with the UN Habitat. So cities, if we look at them from this perspective, we can really look at the business case and economic case for a city. But in order to do so, we have to look at the city from an urban metabolism perspective. Look at it as an economist. Close your city. Look at the citizens you have inside. I consider with the level of their consumption patterns, what do we need? What resources, water, energy, wood, food, whatever you want, material do we need? Where are they coming from? Can we make sure that we manage them in a more resource efficient manner? And once they are in the city, how we can manage them more efficiently, how we can mine the city in order not to import more resources and to avoid exporting pollution or other waste. It's a very simple concept. I can tell you there are very, very few mayors in the world that are implementing it, but it can help them a lot because it's a fantastic element on their dashboard. Go back to the SDGs and look at each SDG as the center of the other 16, because the SDGs cannot be looked at one by one. It will be the biggest mistake we can do. It's an integrated approach we need to put them. I put SDG 11 at the center. You close it and look at around it for the SDG 12, and you can do it, look at the relation with the others. This exercise can be done with each and every SDG, and that's where you can create the synergies and relation between them. So when we look at the city and want to see how you want to localize the SDGs, see how you can decouple at city level, how you can make things better with less resources and less impact. Focus on building and construction. The fourth IPCC report has made it very clear. The low-hanging fruit is in the building sector. And in most countries, we only show the LEED certified building or the BREEAM certified building, which are 5, 10, or 100, and the majority of the houses are built business as usual, which is a big mistake. We don't have enough about the economic argument of it. We don't calculate it. We make it most of the time focusing on poverty, which is absolutely essential, but we don't see how to get on that. We don't see very well the issue of resource flow and system approach. When we talk about governance for localizing SDG, how do we bring the partners together? Let me take a very simple example, the building sector. Very simple one. The different stakeholders for a building are never sitting together. Never. And how can you make it for a city already? If you look from the designer, the architect, use of material, the landowner, the tenant, and so on, there is almost never a consideration between them, consultation, in order to see how we can make together a sustainable building. So how can it be for a city? And this is why governance is an extremely complicated issue, but we need to see how to do it. Now, we have been mentioning, these are my few last slides. A lot of awareness is needed, it has been highlighted a lot, but also enabling capacity. Appropriate enabling for the right people. Decentralization, yes, but we need also to decentralize cooperation. So it's not just to tell, okay, you have this, but you also in terms of collaboration, cooperation, how it can be done. Let us draw lessons from Agenda 21. We have been doing local Agenda 21 in so many countries. And what after that? And now we're talking about local 2030. What are you drawing from there? What lessons are we taking from there? So let's be careful about it and see how we do it. And make sure that the local authorities are perceived as really partners of our government. That it's at the local level that we have to do it, and we need to lead by example, as it was just said previously. Now, very briefly, where I am coming from for this one, I coordinate this program, which is called Switch Asia, SCP facility. I have been called in to implement, to deliver what I have been fighting for the last 20 years. Asia is a fantastic place where we can do it. Mainstreaming, local project, network facility. European Union is investing a lot of money there. We're working in 19 countries. And our purpose is really to link, guide, enable those different partners, see how we can better localize, mainstream and localize the SDGs and the delivery, and then measure the impact as much as we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now ask Dr. Lan Zue, Dean of the School of Public Policy and Management from Tsinghua University, to share some of the experience of sustainable cities in China and SDG.
Okay, I know that we're running short of time. I think I will start with, first of all, I think I think how great that we've been able to get SDGs passed. So I think this is probably the greatest public policy experiment in human history. If you think about the scale of what we are trying to achieve. But at the same time, there are enormous challenges. I don't have enough time to go through it. But let me just read some of the titles. First of all, the goals are so ambitious and complex. There's no need to elaborate on that. Second, the capacity for implementation is really limited. And the third, policy environment is really uncertain. I mean, daily things are changing. The next one, measurement, is on, I think we have a lot of challenges in measuring the data and so on. So I think those are just four, major challenges that we're facing. So how do we implement SDGs? How do we really translate the goals from from the central to the goals to local actions? And that has been sort of what we've been talking about. It's just so wonderful to hear all the experiences and from the local mayors. And so here I think as a sort of researcher, we've also looked at this issue and tried to work with local government in China and try to distill from their experiences and to see what we can learn from their experience. So here I'm sharing some of the research done by my colleagues and myself. So I'm talking about 3 cases related to central and local government. I think from the theory, we know there's really some challenges in central-local relationship. And the first one is conflicting interests between central and local government. I don't need to elaborate on this. I think for those countries with multi-layers of government, you know what I mean. Of course, I think in different systems, the challenges are different. Federal system or maybe the unitary system. In China, it's a unitary system, particularly with multi-layers of government, and things are quite challenging. The second is there's enormous information asymmetry between central and local government. And then I think also the coordination among different players across different parts of the government, and also sort of between the central, local, and also sometimes multinational. That's also a tremendous challenge. So that's just some of the major challenges that any student in public policy and public administration know very well. So how do we address that in reality? So I'm talking about 3 cases in China of how to address those challenges. Basically, you really need to think about governance innovation. The first one is a local competition through pilot scheme. This is China's program on so-called low carbon province and cities. I don't have enough time to really go through the details, but basically this is a program that's initiated by the central government to create so-called pilot cities and provinces in different parts of China. So local government can apply to be part of this, and so there are 3 waves of implementation in this. And now there are over 45 cities in China in this program, and they're trying various ways in trying to implement the low carbon programs. And I think there's a complex policy process. I'll skip that. But I think a crucial part is that there's a need to recognize regional variations of practice of these pilots. So actually there are very different ways, 7 different ways of local government actually can implement this program. So I think through some sort of local competition incentives, but also allowing the variations of local government, that's one a crucial lesson that I learned from this. The second case is the learning from international experience. I think particularly would be relevant to this, the conference we're here. So this is micro credit poverty alleviation program. I think this program was basically China actually started to experiment on this and implement this since 1990s. Basically there are 4 phases of this program. The first one is the piloting and observation. Second, adoption and promotion. And the third is standardization, management. And the last one is international transfer. Here, I think that you can see that the central and local government and also international organizations are playing different roles. So let's see the first phase. The first phase, I think, is the piloting and observation. This is in 1994 to 96. Here, actually, the UNDP is the messenger. They brought the idea of micro credit experience from, I think it was from Bangladesh. And so they brought the experience to China. And I think at this time, the central government is not quite sure whether this is a good idea. So they are more of an observer, of course with some general support, to allow UNDP to experiment in China in some regions. So this is the first stage. The second stage, adoption and promotion. And this is the time actually when you see some really great outcome from the pilot. And so this time the central government becomes more supportive and naturally becomes a national program and supporting the implementation, so in a way upscale at the national level. And so here you can see that the central local government and UNDP are playing different roles in this second stage. And the third stage is the standardization process from 1999 to 2005. And here I think the central government wanted to, because I think it's, now we spread that upscale at national level. There's a lot of variations, and also there could be also problems for corruption and so on. So there's a need for standardization. So the central government implemented reform so that actually to making sure that indeed the process is tightened and also standardized. And here at the UNDP is playing a critical role in advising the government to how to really make this process standardized, but also at the same time that can take care of the local variations. And the fourth one, the phase 4, is actually when this program is very well implemented in China. UNDP is summarizing the experience from China and then to retransfer to other countries. So actually there's a second transfer from China to other countries. So here you can see that at different stage of the process, international organizations are playing different roles. For example, in the first stage is information carrier. The second stage is technician in policy lab. I use the technician, I think, with great hesitancy, because technician is somebody people don't pay attention to. But here, I think the UNDP is willing to do that in a way to help the local government in how to, to get the process work. And finally, I think the latter stage policy advisor is a critical role that UNDP plays. Okay, I know I have only 1 minute, but I can't, help to get the third case to go through. Here is the NGO is playing the role in also helping the central and local government in realizing so-called environmental information disclosure. Again, this is a study that I did. You all know that environmental policy is a tremendous challenge in Asia. And there are many tools, but information-based tools has been recognized as a very important one. And China began to implement this tool. From 1997, there was no information disclosure. Now, in 2017, there are tremendous information disclosure. How did this happen? Again, central government had a whole process in trying to push for the policy change. With some limited success, but at the same time, there were a lot of information asymmetry problem. So it's very hard to really get to know how actually the local government did on this. Here, I think the NGO is playing some role. NGOs, initially, I think in the environmental space, they really fight with the government. They feel that the government is not doing enough in information disclosure. So basically, they try different strategies. For example, in highlighting the failure of the local government, and also in terms of litigation and so on. So that's what they've been trying to do. However, I think as they learn from the lessons, now they are trying to find innovative measures in doing the implementation by really looking at how local government disclose environmental information. So in a way, what we call the EID on EID. So NGOs, they monitor the local government on information disclosure, and they're also providing different tools for the general public. So general public can use that to monitor how different local government are doing on information disclosure. And so actually they also have a competition on that for local government. So actually some of the local government who are not doing well and then are punished. So in a way, I think they are providing the facilitating role. So there's a mutual adaptation process on policy implementation of the government and also the NGOs. Okay, final lessons. I think the challenge of central-local relationship is manifested in different ways in different levels of government. I think that's, so how to maximize the intrinsic strengths and also the weakness of minimize the weaknesses. And the second is overcoming this requires governance innovation that's adapted to local situations. And third, how to, environmental conducive to change is critical. I think the reform mindset is critically important. The last one is consistent leadership is critical. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we heard a lot of the impressive efforts that are already going on in terms of localizing the SDGs. I won't try to summarize. Maybe we can go directly to the questions. Maybe we can also look at, to some extent, how social impact investing can try to channel some funds from the capital markets to some of these initiatives. Maybe that can be part of the discussion. So please, anyone who would like to pose a question to the many.
Can I ask a question related to the first presentation? It was really excellent. I have understood somehow that you believe that the public sector is not yet there, that they have really to understand better what's going on and how they can divert some investment. But you gave the impression as if the private sector is there and is doing things right, which leaves us with a false impression, because there is a lot of greenwashing also in the private sector when we see what the big companies are doing, showing the 1%, hiding the 99 business as usual, and so on. This is my first question. And then just two remarks. You did not refer at all, I want to see your opinion about that, about the work of UNEP-FI inquiry, if you are aware of it, and what is your relation, yes, and relation with, you say Bangladesh, we think always about Muhammad Yunus and the work he's doing. There's some similarities, so how this is related to that or how you contribute to that. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, those are good questions. I think, first of all, I don't want you to think that I'm saying public sector is not doing anything and private sector is doing everything. And also the fact that the private sector, everything they're doing is wonderful. I think one thing we have to be very aware of is generalizations. So I think in terms of the public sector, obviously that's the role of the public sector to keep the social good in mind. So the work that the public sector is doing, the work the various UN bodies is doing, an essential component of, frankly, where we are today. The question is now how to do more of that and where do we get the capital for it? And you are right, what's happening now, interestingly, is I believe in the private sector there's an abuse of SDG. And we actually ourselves, we are cringing when we're seeing this. There are green bonds that are being issued, which are not really green. They're more like extremely light green, or even I would say mustard. So the thing is, what's happening is because people are jumping on it, I think it's also, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that as we are engaging with the private sector and trying to unlock the capital, we do it the right way. So which means that through impact investing, we are measuring the impact, we are ensuring the fact that the impact and the financial return stays very much intact, as a part of it. So I think these are the things, and trust me, we are sitting here, we're just horrified, some of the things that we're seeing. But also, to be fair, on the other side, we're seeing that a lot of the UN bodies are now jumping in and saying they're doing impact investing, which they're not. So I think we need to be very careful with terminology. We need to be careful with the fact that we don't get so dizzy with celebration. Because I think everyone wants SDG to work. And the elephant in the room that you talked about is the fact that in most cases, Millennium Development did not work, right? And I think we sort of forgot that, and we kind of jumped into SDG, and now everyone's sort of wants us to work, which is fantastic. That's what makes us human beings. We want to have good things to hold on to, but we need to do it right. Now, in terms of looking at how, I guess, sorry, your second question was the
Relation to what UNEP
UNEP, yes. So, okay, so UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, interestingly has done some work in terms of working with some groups in structuring some bond on the climate side. And this again has been some initiatives that they have embarked on, but we are yet to see sort of what happens with them. And then in terms of, because again, we also see there is a big sort of a gap between what's announced and what's done. So we kind of need to see, what actually happens. And then in terms of Muhammad Yunus and microfinance, I was there in the early days of Grameen Bank in 1991, 92. And what I always use the example of is microfinance has done fantastic work. I'm a big believer in microfinance and the work that Professor Yunus has marketed across the globe. But if you can carry this image with you today, which is, we are very excited about seeing a woman with a cow. We give them a small loan and they have a cow. Fantastic. Why don't we think about that woman actually having a dairy farm and that woman actually walking over to Wall Street? Somehow, I think in our head, in our image, we also limit it. We do not think a woman with a cow in a sari can be in Wall Street. We need to make that happen. And only if we can make that happen, that we have met a lot of the SDG goals. So I think that's where we are coming from, which is the fact that there's no silver bullet, but we really need to figure out ways to connect the Wall Street with the back street.
Thank you. My name is Ling Long. I come from China. I have a question close to Mr. Arab. I'm so happy you point out the elephant in the house. I can't agree more. You mentioned the key point is the unsustainable way of assumption. You mentioned there will be 3 billion additional middle class entering the market in the Asia area, but that means the majority part of the middle class still in developed countries such as Americans or European countries, and how can we transform their way of consumption? And the second question goes to Professor Xue from Tsinghua University. From your share of China's case of central and local government cooperation, it seems Chinese experience is learning by doing and step by step. Do you think this is some experience we can share with the other countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me correct some element first. The majority of the middle class is not and will not be in developed countries. If you look in terms of figures, no, it will be in China, in India, in Indonesia, in Nigeria, in South Africa. That's where we will be the bulk, we will have the bulk of the middle class consumers who are today and will be tomorrow. Of course, we need to change first the consumption patterns of the developed countries because they gave us the bad example. There are some of them correcting it, not quickly, not enough. But we should not wait for them to do it in order to correct ours, because let us be blank here. Their wealth mostly is based on the resources that they have taken from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America. Developing countries cannot do it. You cannot, because there are not so many resources left there, and population is growing. Africa will be 1.5 billion very soon, so they need their resources, and so on and so forth. So it is in our interest in developing countries to learn from the mistake, not to reproduce the same model. Simply, we cannot afford to do it because they will have no resources first. The second one is that from an economic perspective, that's why I insist a lot on the word resource efficiency. It makes a big difference for us in developing countries to adopt this and to move further. I give you a sample example on water. I forgot about the building, which is the most obvious one. If it's a magnitude, if a developed country consumer is consuming 500 liters of water, if he or she saves 100 liters of water, they will not see a difference in their way of life. Okay, they will keep their standard, but they will still save water, and they will have good conscience. For a developing country, if you go to a poor country like Tanzania or Nepal and so on, and they're consuming only 50 liters, if they save 5 liters, it can make for them a huge difference because they can wash their baby, they can have clean water for something else. So the principle is the same. The impact is much more important. So forget about developed countries and their mistake. Look at our own development and make it more efficient.
Okay, let me take advantage of while having the microphone, make a short comment on this issue on the consumption. I think I totally agree with Ms. Arab that consumption side is so critically important, particularly in Asia, exactly as you mentioned. But at the same time, I see the policy challenge is how to develop a convincing narrative for the population in Asia to change their behavior, the behavior, not to follow the Hollywood, not to follow the European and North American lifestyle. Several years ago, I think we invited someone from World Resource Institute to come as a speaker and to exactly the same point that you made. But then I was surprised that the one student, stood up and he said, "Look, you have enjoyed a good life for over 100 years and so on. Now, finally, Asia, now we are developing, and our life has been changed, and now we have the resources, and then we have the money to buy big house and to buy cars and so on. So why we are not allowed to enjoy a good life? Why when we enjoy a good life, then there is not enough resources for the world?" So I think that, certainly no, I did not agree with his point, but I think there's a need, to develop a new narrative to convince the Asian population to see, you have to point out to what are the good examples set up by the Europeans, by the Americans. Otherwise, I think it would be very difficult to develop that narrative. So yeah, so let me stop there. Now let's respond to the question that raised here. I think that's absolutely right. I think the learning by doing, I think is what China has learned over the last 40 years in the reform. So I think that has been talked a lot about. But I think learning by doing is not as simple as what one has often said. So I think there's several things. First of all, you need to have an environment that allows that experiment, that allows that change. I think that one thing that China has gained in the past is that over the 40 years, there's a consistent environment for reform, for change. So at the 19th Party Congress, that still saying China will still insist on reforming its policies and institutions. So I think that mindset and that environment is critically important. The second thing is how do we synthesize from the experience? I think that people often say, we do experiment and so on. But I think there's a need to also to think about to do research. I think that's where I think the academia can play a critical role to synthesize to see what are some of the general lessons that can be upscaled, that can be transferred. But what are some of the special cases? Because you don't want to use the special cases to generalize that, and sometimes that can make a huge mistake. And China has learned from that as well. So I think the research part, the analysis part, is critically important. The third point, let me just be very brief, is adaptation. As we can see that we often have some roles for government, for international advisors, for example. So I think I commend UNDP's role in that case I mentioned. Because I think that often international organizations, they are the advisors to the central government. But in the microcredit case, they're willing to, what I call the technicians in the laboratory. For people who do scientific research, you know that the principal researcher are the ones that's most prominent. I mean, you have the general ideas, but the technician is really the one that makes things work. So I think the UNDP office, they're willing to serve that role to make sure that in the local pilot program, things can work, can change, can work. And then they can synthesize that and then make that sort of, in a broader way and more generalized way. So I think that's sort of the willingness to change your role. I think that's also very important. Thank you.
1 minute. Can you give me 1 minute? Really 1 minute. It's an important message. Because you refer to something critical, I don't have time to go through it. If we manage to bring the SCP agenda high in the UN at the highest level, it's because we got the support of a group of 77 in China. It was first perceived as a European one, and we needed to stop it quickly. So the narrative is very simple. It has to be contextualized. We never say don't consume. We say consume differently, more responsibly, more efficiently. You can still reach the highest level of development by decoupling and consuming less resources and more efficiently. Very simple.
One more question and then...
Thank you, Chair. I'm Shalin Singhal from Terry University. This question is to the Chair. What we understand is from the discussions today and some discussions yesterday as well, that there is limited comprehension even at the global community level about the SDGs. And I want to ask the Chair that would you raise any cautions in the agenda of localizing SDGs while we are almost fast-tracking this process, focusing more on measurable indicators, targets, which needs to be measured at the local level. And my second question is also, this agenda of localizing would also require resources. It will not be limited to comprehension only. It would require resources. Any suggestions on where would those resources, particularly finance, will come from for the countries to localize these SDGs? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one more question before we respond, and then you wanted to make And thank you very much for your patience. I hope that some of the questions we can also address in the following breakaway groups, which will delve into some of these issues in greater detail. So please just...
Okay, thank you for your time. I will be brief. My question is for Ms. Sarkas. My name is Agus Joko. I'm board member of Indonesian Supreme Holding Institutions. Ms. Sarkas, I would like to ask you, because I'm interested in the bonds matters things, okay? And I would like to have a little bit detailed explanation about how to put the bonds into market. And how could you explain who would be the issuer of the bonds and how to calculate or monetize the SDGs criteria, become a project and that can be monetized. And is there any different methodologies in calculating the project monetizing between SDGs projects and other business usual projects? Thank you very much. That's my question.
If you respond.
Oh, okay, all right. So before I sort of go into the techniques of the bond structuring, one of the things that I want to just comment on in the discussion that we just had in terms of the consumption and it's Asia's turn to kind of lead the good life. I think one of the things that we have seen, and again going back to the number I was using, there are now 3.4 million high net worth individuals in Asia. I mean, that's an incredible amount of wealth sitting in Asia. What we also have seen is Asians are not very philanthropic. Okay, so again, I'm saying something which is a lot of you, it's going to hurt you. You're going to say, what are you saying? The reality is, we look at philanthropy in a very family way. We help our families, we help our communities, we help our local religious organization. Now, interestingly, if you're going to make any changes, be it in consumption pattern, in terms of us having a balance between a good life and consumption, we really need to be thinking about doing well while we're doing good. And that's basically the approach that we have taken, which is recognizing the fact that with Asians, if we want them to somehow be involved in giving back and also be responsible citizens, they actually need to be part of the financial market. They actually need to be making money, perhaps not as much they would make, in terms of the returns, but still they're making return and they're also doing good. That brings me back to the bonds. Some of the bonds, we have various investment platforms, but we are also structuring these bonds. One of the big things we saw was the fact that there are a lot of good work that's happening, but they're all happening in small scale. And the reality is, for the financial markets to come in, they need scale. They need things that they can actually come in, they're large, they can actually understand it, they're not interested in something which is small. So one of the more effective ways what we did is we literally used finance. We structured a bond where we pooled together a group of basically SMEs, microfinance, where they are focused on an outcome. In this case, it was creating livelihood for women. So the SDG goal was very much a part of it, looking at the gender equality. So the big SDG 5 was very much a part of that. We also looked at these organizations in terms of their financials, if they can actually repay a loan. And what we then saw was the fact that even if they could repay the loan, even if they could actually meet the outcome, interestingly, the market wanted something more. One, again, a big thing about the market, which we don't talk about much in public sector, is risk. They don't like risk, okay? So we need to figure out ways to actually mitigate risk. So what do? We actually created, again in financial world, we call it first loss. We created a first loss mechanism. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying if anything happens, there's percentage of it that you get back right away. Similarly, we also created a guarantee. So the US government came in and guaranteed 50% of the bond. So a bondholder, someone private sector, when they came in, when we floated it, they already had a first loss. They actually were getting the private sector guarantee, and they were like, wow, this is really good. On top of that, I'm getting a 5.5% coupon over 4 years. And it's impacting 385,000 women, which is being measured. Now, there's a lesson here, which is if we have limited resources on the public sector, how do we use that effectively to catalyze, open up large amounts of capital sector money, capital markets money? So in this case, if you look at the numbers, this bond was a small bond, it was $8 million. It cost us about 800,000 to make it. There was a bond, for first loss and all that around it. But think of the multiplier effect. $800,000 brought in $8 million, and it catalyzed 385,000 women. Now, I want all of you to think about any program and project that you created, if it impacted 385,000 women and how much it cost. I bet it cost a lot of money. So we need to be smart about using the money we have and being able to basically catalyze the capital markets to do it. And this is not something, again, it takes finance, it takes understanding of the structures, etc. Again, happy to talk about it and offline. But I think the reality is just for you to take away that there is a way to do this. And you just need to be kind of open-minded about it.
So maybe just to wrap up, to the question you said about the fast tracking and the localization and whether there is some potential for difficulties arising later. I think we've seen many cities and subnational governments taking action on the SDGs, and that's very laudable. But we also heard the importance of the coordinating role of the central government in the presentation of the Philippines, but also in China, where the central government sort of makes sure that some of the good practices are being scaled up. So in order for the coherence, and this is, we mentioned that yesterday also, that it's really also, many of the SDGs require national action, global action, so it's also about trade policies, etc. So yes, action is required on many fronts, and the national government really needs to ensure that that coherence is in place. It's also that a lot of the capacities, we heard from many cities who are, where maybe capacity is greater than in other localities. So there's also a role of the central government in ensuring that capacities of those left behind are being built and that resources also flow there. And of course the resource issue is one that we don't have. I mean, there are a lot of examples of how we can leverage private sector financing, but again, there are a lot of practices. But we also, I mentioned yesterday an example from Bangladesh, where some of the costing exercises that's going on, because a lot of these plans are often not costed and more often wish lists. But if we look at more integrated approaches, there are a lot of cost savings if you look at high impact investments that can trigger progress. And I think we heard also the example of social impact investments, how they focus on women's economic empowerment or gender issues, how we can kind of target our resources there. And end here. Thanks. I hope we can discuss some of these issues in the breakout groups, and I thank you for your patience and so please have some quick coffee, and I believe we will break into the groups now.
Thank you so much, Michaela. A round of applause, please, for the panelists. Thank you. So now we have learned this morning about the broader trends and issues in localizing the SDGs. One of the key gaps we talked about was finance to localize. And so we have a group session that will touch on these issues, and we also talked about cities and the role of local governments to really operationalize that and drive the process locally too. We have a group session on that too, actually. So what I would like to note is that you can grab your coffee, then you can go straight to your different rooms. Group 1 on localizing the SDGs, which will be chaired by our moderator, Arab Habala. If you want to keep talking about these issues that he was mentioning and other issues under the umbrella of localizing, please go to room 102. If you want to talk about group 2, resources allocation between national and local governments, please go to room 104. That will be moderated by Ms. Adriana Alberti from UNDESA.
I'll be moderating the session. You know what it is about. I have been making my presentation this morning, so I will not lose another 3 minutes to expose again, so that we can gain on your time for the presentation and mainly on the discussion. I really wish to have an interactive discussion because we have the next generation here, the people who will be leading tomorrow. So we have to see which type of messages we are giving them and what they will take from us. They will be the next mayor, the next minister, the next business people. So let us see how we can adequately guide them in a responsible way. So this is it. I mean, you have heard my position, how pessimist I am, but I can be also very optimistic when we look at the opportunities. And there are many, many opportunities for adequately localizing the SDGs by drawing lessons from the past. I made a brief comment about Local Agenda 21, and now we talk about Local Agenda 2030. We should not take it as a scapegoat, and many people are taking it as a scapegoat. This is an opportunity, it's politically interesting, we can talk about it, it drives attention and so on. At the end of the day, what are we effectively implementing? What are we effectively doing with the SDGs? For which purpose? Is it just for the sake of saying that we did that, we had a report, or is it really for implementing it, and how do we implement it? And I have been deeply involved in the elaboration of the SDGs. For long night sessions, discussion with countries and so on. And I can tell you, the way it is taken by countries, by the private sector, is not the best way we wish to see. I mean, it could be much more open, transparent, effective. We are not yet there, but there are opportunities to make things right by understanding what is there for us, why this could be a useful tool to help a local authority better manage their space, their resources, their people. The SDGs can provide this tool because it can help them thinking differently, integrating differently, working with different stakeholders, if they effectively wish to go there, rather than just having some point a ticking box that I work on the SDGs. So it's challenging, but it can be very promising if done well. And I refer a lot to Local Agenda 21, which has been ticking the box for many, many, many cities and countries. Very few have effectively implemented it. Same for sustainable development strategies and so on. We can learn from mistakes, we can move further. People are much more informed. The new generation have the technology today, but the technology is double-edged. We have to see exactly what to do to take from technology to make things right. Otherwise, we can make them just worse. So I will hear from you, from the presentation we'll have here, and then we'll go on discussions. And I will hope that you will guide us and give us some optimism after that. This is, I wanted to be shorter than that, sorry for that. So can I now ask, we have 4 presentations, 3 PowerPoint and 1 not PowerPoint. Each speaker has about 15 minutes. We will give them double applause if they go less than 15 minutes. And if they go beyond with the woo. I hope we will not be doing that. Excellency, Honorary Eloy Eklar, Mayor of Girona from Philippines, you heard him this morning, and he will give us a little bit more now. Please.
Good morning, everyone. It is with honor to present to you how we advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in our locality. Girona is located in the central Luzon Island. The biggest island comprises the Philippine archipelago. It lies in the heart of the province of Tarlac and is commonly referred to as melting pot of central Luzon. The municipality consists of 44 barangays, or villages, with 141.47 square kilometers of plain and rugged agricultural land. The municipality of Girona has a total land area of 14,147 hectares. A large tract of its territory is primarily devoted to agriculture, 66.22%, while the rest are allocated for various purposes such as residential, 18%, commercial, 0.05%, industrial, 3.1%, institutional, 0.8%, and the smaller part of its remaining areas served as open spaces, 1.5%, rivers, 7.5%, and forest lands, 1.9%. Obviously, the municipality of Verona is basically an agricultural town, as manifested in the existing general land use, and its economy is dependent largely on agriculture. Next slide, please. How we're achieving our SDG goals in the municipality of Verona. My administration's banner slogan is Servicio Totoo, which means true public service focusing on the following agenda: food security, health, education, employment, and environment, which are all geared towards improving people's lives with the end in mind of ending poverty in our municipality. To institutionalize the implementation of the projects relative to the attainment of these goals, these were integrated and incorporated in our 10-year municipal development plan. With regard to SDG 2, which is to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture, our municipality experiences intense rainfall that normally results in flooding in some areas. During dry months, on the other hand, the municipality is particularly sensitive to drought associated with El Nino events. These extreme weather patterns affect rice and crop production. Our major products, the major source of livelihood of our people. Next slide, please. To address this concern, our municipality entered into agreement with the non-government organization Rice Watch Action Network and with the Philippine Atmospheric, Geological, Astronomical, Seismological Administration, or PAGASA, to introduce the Climate Resiliency Field School project. The CRFS has promoted the climate-informed, sustainable, and resilient agriculture practice, including organic farming, diversified farming, and sustainable rice production, and intensification measures which ultimately improve farmers' income and livelihoods. Next slide, please. As part of the project implementation, the municipality has set up local agreement, next slide please, weather station, the first in the country which has fully funded by local government. Next slide please. Through this project, farmers are informed of the 9-day weather forecast of PAGASA. Thus, the farmers and the NGO become aware of the crops that may be adversely affected by the weather and can suggest risk management options. Next slide, please. Some people in the communities, particularly farmers, are encouraged to enroll in the climate resiliency field schools, and they are trained to deliver information and reports as to the accuracy of the weather forecast, as well as the impact of the community to this monitoring activity is done through a project called Inform. To strengthen the monitoring and evaluation of agriculture conditions in the municipality, we also have established the early warning system for food and nutrition security and resilience in the municipality, where the status of agroclimatic conditions and agriculture production are closely monitored. This system records local weather data, localizes and disseminates weather and climate forecast and advisories, liaisons with PAGASA, and eventually determines the locality's climate change impact thresholds. As regards to SDG 3, which is to ensure the healthy lives and promote well-being of all ages, this municipality has embarked in giving healthcare program as one among its priority programs. This is manifested in its Nutrition Action Plan, where 4 government agencies and 1 big food corporation collaborated for the achievement of the SDG 3. The frontliners to ensure that the said action plan will be implemented are our rural health workers. At present, we have 3 rural health centers covering 44 barangays with a total population of 92,928 Neronians. On top of our priority is the nutrition program, which includes Operation Timbang, being conducted and updated every first quarter of every year to monitor every child's growth and height, not only to evaluate the nutritional status of children in the municipality, but to assess the impact of the program. In addition, we were able to mobilize our barangay health workers and barangay nutritionist scholars for the centralized data for 0 to 71 months old. Aside from this school age, children were also monitored under the program through the Department of Education in coordination with school heads, which is done twice a year during the month of January and June. With the effort, we were able to establish a Herona nutritional spot map. This was accomplished through an application provided by United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, which we have partnered in our early warning system for food and nutrition security in partnership with the Jollibee Group Foundation. With the said application, we can accurately monitor children who suffer from malnutrition, stunting. As a result of this endeavor, we're able to build a database involving children ages from 0 to 12 years of age. Also under the nutrition program are special programs that include the operation of the Central Kitchen School Feeding Program for severely wasted school children, and Garantisadong Pambata conducted every April and October, in which we were able to administer vitamin A and deworming tablets for children, which intends to boost their resistance against diseases and promote growth. All of which are 100% accomplished as compared to the targets for the year 2016. We have also the child care program, wherein 2,607 children from 9 to 11 months were fully immunized. 2,028 infants were given Hep B at birth, and 2,471 were exclusive breastfed up to 6 months old. Aside from child care, the municipality of Herona has also a special program for material care, for which complements the child care program. Part of the material care program includes provision of complete iron, vitamin A, for mothers who are after childbirth have experienced postpartum depression, also called postnatal depression. The municipality implements national program that directly addresses the problems of the poverty, such as social pension program and the conditional cash transfer. The social pension covers senior citizens aged 27 years and above. The municipality also implements the conditional cash transfer program of the national government, targets indigent households, a subsidy for the basic education of their children, and maternal and child care. As regards SDG 4, which is access to basic education, free education is provided by the national government in our country, from primary to secondary, kinder to grade 12. Also, a preschool or daycare center is mainly established to help in the values formation and socialization of children aged 3 to 4 years old. The facility intended for parents to prepare their children for grade school, which daycare services is being provided in the municipality through our Municipal Social Welfare and Development Office. The Department of Education supervises and manages all public and private schools within the country. In support to SDG 4, the municipal government also provides scholarship program to deserving indigents who wanted to pursue high school or college, budget for which program is incorporated in our annual budget. As provided by the Philippine law, the municipal government provides 1% of the total real property tax to school. This is called the Special Education Fund, which is especially allotted for the repair and maintenance of school buildings. The municipality of Verona The municipality of Verona has become an attractive place for investment, not only due to strategic location on Luzon, the longest island, the biggest island in the Philippines, but because of its business and friendly atmosphere. Big international companies such as Oishi Company and New Hope Feed Mill of China, Grobest Feed Mill Company from Taiwan, the Charwan Pokhan Food Corporation, and Aqua and Animal Feeds Company of Thailand have already invested in our municipality. Relative to this, an ordinance was passed for the international or local companies to hire 90% of their employees from Herona, thus generating employment. Likewise, a provision in the ordinance on the strict implementation of a friendly environment to observe the Clean Air Act before business permit is issued. The local government's initiative is continuing provision of entrepreneurship skills development for our all constituents.
2 minutes, please. 2 minutes.
The Republic of the Philippines upholds the right of women in nation building. This is translated in our laws. According to this law, our local legislator called Sangguniang Bayan also passed an ordinance upholding the rights of women. And to ensure the ordinance is implemented, the municipality crafts annual gender and development plan wherein 5% of annual budget is dedicated to the fund programs activities. Currently, our water source comes from local water district, which is government corporation under the supervision of the national government through local water utilities administration. In support to SDG, providing access to safe water, the municipality provides individual water pumps to households that do not have access to clean and potable water, which were identified in our community-based monitoring system. Currently, our water source comes from local water district. Aside from this, municipal governments also set up water utility barangays which are not covered by the local water district funded by the national government.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to all participants. I will go fast. Don't worry about the time limit. But anyway, first of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me to join this symposium, especially on book. At that time, I have a problem in my area because it's flooding. I am afraid that I cannot come because of very heavy flood in southern part of Thailand. So many provinces, includes my area also. But I said to my colleague that you arrange it, then I will go and I will come back very fast, very soon. And our my presentation is we cannot deny that three agenda of presentation. First one is policy and planning. It's quite important. And the second one is we're talking about budgeting. And the third one, I will talking about the localizing. This conclude all the system of the viewer. Policy and planning according to the mechanism of SDG in Thailand, so-called Thailand SDG institutional mechanism shared by Prime Minister. But in general, they just only meeting, they have meeting twice since 2015 onward. But they have a subcommittee, 3 of subcommittee. The first one implementing SDG, the second one is the subcommittee for enhancing and understanding of the SD with philosophy of sufficiency economy. That's quite important one. And the third subcommittee is the developing information and system and data. I will show you the component of the subcommittee. All of the members of the subcommittee no local representative. This is the point. The first one is compiling with the private sector, NGO, ministry, and secretary by National Economic and Social Development Board. The second also still no local representative. And the third, we have some kind of, this is the Department of Local Administration, but in the top level there. In general, when our country set up in terms of committee, they did not deny the local government organization or local government association to join with. But in this time for SDG, I don't know, they just let out. But anyway, the responsibility for SDG, they set up every ministry responsible for the one single goal, like goal number 1, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Science, Development and Human Security, and the second one, Ministry of Agriculture, because it's concerned about the food and hungry, and the third, Ministry of Public Health, because according to the health, right? And the fourth, Ministry of Education, so on, up to the 7th goal, 17th goal. They have all of the ministry level responsible for it. No local government at all. But anyway, national strategy, Thailand is trying to achieve the vision, security, prosperity, and sustainability to become a high-income economy. This is the still over on the top level. Thailand have 6 development pillars, right? Human capacity and so I cannot see so much, but I just show that the vision of security, prosperity, sustainability that mentioned on all over the top ranking of the country. Anyway, we have a roadmap for SDG by the ministry. Now we are in the 4th stage. Try to challenge the SDG goal, target indicator, focus on sustainable development that link 5 issues. That's the government policy and the national strategy for 20 years and the 12th national plan and also the national reform agenda or urgent agenda for the government. When we're talking about the budget, our government said that the budget for fiscal year of 2017 will be tandem with the mobilization of the government strategy and urgent important policy. Urgent important policy is quite a shortcut for funding. The government goals try to establish a basis of country sustainable development to reduce social inequality, to extend opportunity for the people and to improve quality of life and increase the country competitiveness. And also, this will bring the balanced respect to the economy, society, culture, natural resources, and environmental by adopting the sufficiency economic philosophy of the king as the guideline. You can see that the urgent policy of the Thai government concerned about SDG, the climate change. And the second is the biodiversity. We have two urgent agenda for the Thai government to provide or allocate the budget for that. But anyway, the biofin and CCBA, we hope that can bring or can help to support the SDG number 15, number 11, number 13, and also help to achieve other SDG, for example, SDG number 1 and SDG number 10. Come to the local budget, the line of budget allocation to the local government. Actually, central government and budget bureau try to channel the budget to all ministry and also Ministry of Interior and Department of Local Administration who are responsible for the local governments. And local government themselves can find another kind of fund or resource of fund from private sector and some loan fund. Like a municipality, they have an association in Thailand. The association have some sort of fund collected by the municipality all over Thailand, and then raise up a fund, and every municipality can borrow the fund and return. This is a kind of fast track for the fund for local governments to run their activity, their projects. And also we have some sort of fund from the local tax. And at the provincial level, also sometimes we can request for the fund to run our program or project and activities. And also in the grassroots level, sometimes the ministry, because we have at least 12 ministries, each of ministry channel the budget directly to the province, and the province channel the budget directly to the grassroots level or people, organization or community. Ignore local government sometimes, sometimes, not every time. And last fiscal year, according to the Plan and Decentralization Act 1999, Article 30, said that after 2007, the government should allocate or provide a budget for local government not less than 27%, 25%. But see, on last year, finally we got 28.16% from the central government. But this all of budget include with some policy level hidden agenda on it. The top of the activity and top up some kind of program that we have to done for the central government, but they should know the activity to local government. Anyway, we can see that in this fiscal year, our budget for first quarter, we received at least 200,000 million. That means about 10% or if we compare the 200 million baht delivered to the local government, actually they don't concern about the SDG, but this budget allocation depending on the duty, depending on the what they call like some sort of by function and extra function. We have two kind of budget. The first one is the by function budget. The second one is the extra function budget. The extra one is belong to the central government. But they channel the budget to us in the local level, but we can apply ourselves to the SDG goal. We can apply ourselves. The central government did not say that you should do for this, you should do for that, but local government themselves have to clarify the type of project that with concern to the budget that they allocate. Also, as I mentioned in last session, that we cannot wait because we are the representative of the people, that we channel the localizing SDG into our community, our area, as we can do, as much we can do. For example, almost every target, almost every goal, since the first goal up to sixth goal, we have activity with the villager, with the community, with some organization, some institution, especially the university, college, to join us with local knowledge platform, and we try to build up in terms of the curriculum for a student or a young student. We use the child-centered approach. We accept from the University, Prince of Songkhla University, come to assist us. And also, we have another point of SDG goal, even in the 7 and 13. In 13 goal, we have a disaster relief volunteer. Every year we train and we retrain again and again, because in my area it's easy to fly because it's lower land. And we join the livable city and low carbon city, and also we have another kind of project to work with NGO in terms of the housing for poor people. We call Ban Man Kong. Man Kong is security. Ban is house. The house that secure for the people. Okay. All of SDG goals that we try to apply by ourselves did not have any suggestion or any comment from the central government that you should do or not. We do it by ourselves. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. As we all are hungry and maybe sleepy, I'll try to make my presentation shorter. So 2030 Youth Force is an Asia Pacific regional youth network that works on sustainable development goals. Our purpose is to engage youth in Asia Pacific to work on SDGs and promote it and reaching out to many youths as far as possible and leaving no one behind. We believe in inclusion. And this is how we work. First, awareness, engagement, and action. Regarding awareness, when we formed the 2030 Youth Force in Bangkok in June 2016, and when I went back to my country and I talked to my friends about sustainable development goals, and they were totally blank on it. I was shocked. Yeah, many youth don't know about it, then how can they contribute? How can they work? That's why we planned, or we took some actions to raise awareness on it. And that's why we started doing SDG studies on colleges and universities there. We talked about what are the sustainable development goals and how their small behaviors can help in achieving that. Small behaviors such as not throwing food, being responsible in consuming resources, and contributing from the position and location where they are. And 2030 Youth Force in Nepal, the college studies regular program we have been doing and we are still doing. And one of the major programs we organized in collaboration with UNDP Nepal and other youth organizations is National Dialogue on Social Entrepreneurship. And that had a huge impact for the young entrepreneurs, that they came to know about how they get investment from the government bodies and other private sectors to make their dream real. And beside that, we also organize goal-setting training for the young university students, like how can they decide that in which goal they can work on, and how to set their goal for 5 years or 10 years from now, and become more responsible one to achieving the global goals. And other activities we do organize with other youth organizations. And in the case of Nepal, we believe that making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and resilient means giving all the people access to quality and safe housing. In Nepal, only 1 in 3 population live in safe housing. And second, we believe that engaging communities in discussion and planning for city improvements. Because we hardly talk about this. We hardly come together and discuss how can we make our cities resilient and more improvised. And as Nepal is one of the disaster-prone countries, increasing resilience to disasters matters. If you have heard about the earthquake of 2015, April, it was of 7.9 Richter scale and many people lost their lives. And we need to consider about disaster resilience as well, and ensuring monitoring of waste management and air quality. As we cannot walk without wearing masks there in Kathmandu. And this is so worst condition. And we also we have to think about this air quality as well. How can we walk freely without wearing the mask? And I don't want to go there. So in Nepal now, 1 in 3 people live in municipalities. That means only 33% people are in safe housing, and 49% of the urban population make of youth. It means in 33% area, 49% youth live. That means we don't have energetic youth in remote areas, so that it is not being so developed and it is not being resilient one. And in 2015 earthquake, it caused 8,790 deaths, casualties, and 22,300 injured. And it impacted 8 million people's life. And yeah, regarding the air quality, we are in 4th last situation. You can imagine it's a worst situation there. And another major problem is that Nepal is 11th most earthquake-prone country in the world. And yeah, we have to think about quality of air and the disabled-friendly city, as well as disaster resilience as well. And our future plan for 2030, that we want to increase the percentage of people living in the safe houses from 33% to 60%. I mean, doubling the percentage of people living in safe housing. And deaths and injuries due to disaster will be prevented. Because in one earthquake, if thousands of people lost their life, then how can we talk about sustainable cities? So that is one target. And air pollution will be substantially reduced. Yeah, we also need to think on that. And for that, National Youth Policy advises that youth be mobilized in the protections of the environment and cultural heritage. And we cannot achieve all those goals without including youth in the policy making level. So action plan to achieve all those goals is leading campaigns to clean up the public spaces. Yeah, and youth are the ones who can lead on it. Organizing dialogues among government bodies, communities, NGOs, INGOs, and young people. So goal number 17 comes here. Partnerships among all the stakeholders to make all the goals real and to meet the agendas. And encouraging people to wait for the short distances. I mean, yeah, Kathmandu is not a big city, it's a smaller one. We can walk to reach one place to another. But as we don't have walking friendly lanes and footpaths, we cannot walk there. So we can encourage people to walk and using the public vehicles. And spreading awareness on inclusive and safe cities. As many youths, many people are still unaware about it, we cannot imagine we can achieve all the goals by 2030, unless and until they are aware of it. And providing ways to have our voice heard. We are the youths, young people. We talk here, we talk in the small level, but our voice cannot be heard in the decision-making level. And until and unless we are in the decision-making processes, our voices are heard there, we cannot imagine the cities and making all these agendas real. So yeah, it matters, including youth voice in policy-making level. So I am to share one small story if I have time. Sai Shrestha is one of the campaigners who organizes one campaign to make Kathmandu cycle-friendly city. Chitwan is one of the regional cities in Nepal where using cycle is very common. But in Kathmandu, we cannot find the lanes where we can use cycles. So when he came to Kathmandu for his further study, he organized one campaign to make Kathmandu cycle-friendly city. And now there are some of the places where we can find cycle lanes, and this campaign is being led in other 7 cities of Nepal as well. This is how the voice of youth can work. If we speak together, and if you are aware of, if we are responsible one, our voice matters there. And this is how we can advocate to change the stereotypes, and this is how our voice can be heard, and this is how we can push the 2030 agendas be the real one. And in making the city inclusive and disaster resilience, we are the responsible one. Thank you.